Good morning.
Great.
Let's go. Yeah, let's get started. Let's pray together. That's a great place to get started. Father, thank you. We come and we turn our ear towards you, God. Speak to us. Show us your truth. Soften our hearts, Lord. Pray that you dwell in this place with us, God. Rest our hearts. Help us to breathe deeply right now, to receive what you have for us, but more just to receive your love, Jesus. Thank you. Amen. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Today, we are going to talk about Sabbath. Yeah, it's all right. Some Sabbath fans. Some very enthusiastic Sabbath fans. If you've been hanging around here for a while, you might have heard this word, Sabbath. And more recently, you might have heard its sister word, which is sabbatical, right? That is what the Owens are currently on. Some of them, at least, are on a sabbatical right now, which is why the guy from junior varsity is up here in the starting lineup this week. So we've worked through all the starters. We are... But no, I'm sharing this today with you because it has changed my life. It has impacted me. I was saying earlier, I've been thinking about how crazy it is that Rob comes each week with like a whole set of new ideas. And this is like ideas that I've collected over the last like few years of practice that have come down and totaled into this. So yes, I'm very thankful for the Owens and their family. And y'all keep praying for them as they're doing this. They're walking through some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. Okay? There's some real identity stuff that happens when you've been a pastor for 10 years. And it's your entire identity. And then all of a sudden you stop doing it. So we'll get into that a little bit, but pray for them. Okay, so, yes, Sabbath has become a very important thing to me. But you may be asking a few questions. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today. The first question is just, what is Sabbath? Where does this idea come from? What do we see of it in the Bible? What does it look like? Once we talk about that, I'm going to answer the question of, should you practice it? You person in this room, human in the 21st century. And then the third question, which might be a little bit of a leading question, suggesting that like the answer to that other question was yes, but how do you do it? What does it actually look like in our life? So let's dive in. If you spent any time with me or listening to me teach through the Harvest or Postmates, you have an idea of where I'm going to start. It's hiding behind the English word there. We're going to start with Hebrew. Okay, so let's start in Genesis. We're going to pull up this from Genesis here. My squares got a little messed up, but I'll work through here. So we're going to talk through 2 main Hebrew words that are used for rest in the Bible. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is Shabbat. Can you say Shabbat? Shabbat. Oh, very good. Yes, Shabbat. Shabbat is the word. Shabbat is a verb. And it means to cease, to stop, to rest, to desist. Okay? That's our first word. Shabbat is where we get our noun Sabbath, sabbatical, all these other ideas. Yes, it means to stop. The word simply means to stop working. That's its specific definition. So let's look at it here. This is one of the greatest hits here, right at the beginning, okay? It says, and so the heavens and the earth were completed, and their heavenly lights. By the 7th day, God completed his work, which he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he had done. Then God blessed this 7th day, and he sanctified it, because on it he rested from all his work, which God had created and made. So yes, every time you see he rested, that is the word he Shabbat, okay? He stopped. He ceased his work. The other main word we're going to go into here is nuach. Can you guys say nuach? Yeah. Give it your all. Yes, nuach is this other word that also means rest in Hebrew. Does that word sound familiar? Nuach. Nuach. Noah. 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 It is the name Noah in the Bible. It's the same word. Noah. In the Bible, his name means rest. His name is rest. It's the word for rest. which as you look through his story, and we get to define this word a little more, be thinking about Noah and how he represented rest, okay? So this word means more than sleep, okay? It actually doesn't mean sleep at all. There's another Hebrew word for sleep. Nuach means to rest, and here's some other interesting words: to settle down, to dwell with, okay? The first time we see this word is in Genesis 2:15, okay? It says, the Lord God took the man and put him, Nuach, in the Garden of Eden to work it and to care for it. So this word here is the Lord took the man and rested him in the garden. Sounds beautiful when you say it that way. Yes, this is the first occurrence of Nuach. But you can see it also here too in Exodus. God says to Moses, as he's coming off of Mount Sinai, Moses is freaking out, and the Lord says to him, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. So, like I said, it's not the same word as sleep. This is a different concept. Maybe think of the type of rest when you've at the end of a long day you've come and there's like a warm meal, right? Or you finally have gotten done with something and you've entered into this other type of thing where you settle down into a place. You're comfortable to be where you are. That's the type of rest that I'm talking about, okay? It's really connected to this other word, peace, right? It is the type of rest. Think of like when you go to sleep and it's fitful, right? It's not rest. Think about when you go to sleep and you are just so happy to be exactly where you are. That is Nuach, all right? So let's hold on to those two words, and we're going to jump into the fourth commandment of the 10 Commandments, okay? This is where you see those two words together. So it says, remember the Sabbath day. Remember the Shabbat day, to keep it holy. There's the command. Remember and keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath, Shabbat, of the Lord your God. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them, and he Nuach on the seventh day. For that reason the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So we see these two words coming together, right? In the first creation narrative, it says that God stopped on that day. But he digs into it here. He says he didn't just stop on that day. He did what? He rested. He dwelled with people on that day. So God instructs his people to remember the Sabbath, and he gives them this pattern. Okay? 6 days of work, 1 day of not working. And then he goes on to give a reason. He doesn't do that in these other commands, right? There's not a bunch of reasoning for do not murder, right? For do not commit adultery. Those are in Hebrew, those are 3 words. Do not kill, do not commit adultery. But yes, he goes into this one, right? He gives the reason, the underlying why for this rhythm. And he leads by example. As he rests from his work, Shabbat, he dwells, Nuach, with his people. He's saying he wants you to take 1 day from each week, stop working, and instead enter into something, enter into seventh day rest. Okay? This seventh day rest is a taste. It's a reminder of the garden. Really interestingly, in the creation narrative, each day ends with, and there was evening, and there was morning, day 1. And there was evening, and there was morning, day 2. It goes through all the way. The seventh day does not contain that tag. There is no evening and morning on the seventh day. Why is that? Did they forget? They were running out of paper? No, I think it was because this day was supposed to never end. Like, that was the goal. God created the world, and then his plan was to dwell with humans in it. That's his vision for our life. That's pretty exciting, right? So humans living in communion with God, enjoying the fruit of the garden, that's how it's supposed to be forever. But, as you know in the story, that's not what they chose. They chose to eat from the tree of, I know better, to eat from the tree of distrust. It's held in parallel to the tree of life, so it's the tree of death. And they do this so they can no longer stay in the garden. They no longer get to experience this 7-day rest. So, how does this play out in the rest of the scriptures? Luke talked about last week, it didn't go that well. They pretty much struggled with every one of these commandments, and Sabbath was not an exception. But, just like all these other things, God was faithful. He continued to try and dwell with his people. He did it when he brought his Spirit to rest in the tabernacle, and then when he brought his Spirit to rest in the temple. Can you see that language, the dwelling, right? Taking in. And just like in the garden, the Israelites' lack of trust on each of those stages kept them from entering in and taking in God's invitation to this rest. So there's sort of the pattern, the 6 in 1, the cosmic creation sort of things that all bring together this idea of seventh-day rest, what we were designed for. And you may have noticed that I have not described a single custom or rule or limitation, which is often, that's what we think about when we think of Sabbath, right? We think of these really strict rules and all these things you can and can't do. You can't go to work, you can't cook food, you can't travel over here or do all these different things. But obviously, we need to focus in on something bigger than that, right? If it is just a command to us, it's not the type of life-giving thing that God has designed it to be. So the practice of Sabbath became this huge list of do's and don'ts. You see some of them in the Bible, but a lot more of them came after the fact. They're things that got built upon this original thing. And as we'll see as we journey into the New Testament here a little bit, a lot of these miss the heart of the matter. And that's what happens when human gets involved. It gets messy. So let's look at a section in Isaiah here, sort of recenter this idea of what the Sabbath day is actually supposed to look like. How do we practice this seventh-day rest in this broken world? How can we experience it? What would it look like? Here's what Isaiah says, or it says in Isaiah. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day is honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord. And I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land, to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Let's do it in some plain English here. Let's read it from the Message. The Message version says, if you watch your step on the Sabbath and you don't use my holy day for your personal advantage, if you treat the Sabbath as a day of joy, God's holy day is a day of celebration, if you honor it by refusing business as usual, making money, running here and there, then you'll be free to enjoy God. Oh, I'll make you ride high and soar above it all, and I'll make you feast on the inheritance of your ancestor Jacob. Whew, sounds wonderful. When you put it like that. Listen to the language. Joy, celebration, enjoying God, like being present with Him. This is an incredible gift, right? Yes. So Sabbath is more than just a command, Sabbath rest. It is an invitation, listen to this, it is an invitation to practice for eternity. An eternity in God's presence. It is an act of regular and intentional trust of God's rule on earth. When we find joy in the Lord, we can soar above it all. And we Shabbat in order to nuach, right? We stop working so that we can truly find rest in God. In doing this each week, we practice, right? We habituate trusting in God with our time, trusting Him to provide for us, trusting Him with our life. All right, so that's what Sabbath is, sort of the high ideal. The next question that I want to talk about is, should we, Christians in the 21st century, practice this? So I'm not going to try and convince you that this is still a law or that this is a commandment that you still need to follow. I'm not qualified to do that. But there is someone who is. Jesus was God come to dwell among his people. To nuach among his people. And Jesus actually had a lot to say about the Sabbath and the true rest that God intends for humanity. We're going to read in Matthew's Gospel, one of my favorites. And he includes a series of stories where Jesus is confronted by the religious leaders of the time. And we're going to see how Jesus responds to these people who seemingly hold the Sabbath in such high regard, and how Jesus responds to this so-called high regard. So this is Matthew 12. So if you have your Bibles, open that up. Matthew 12. So it says, "At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, 'Look, we got you now. Your disciples are going and doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath.'" They got him. Put the cuffs on. This guy's a fraud. Jesus responds back in what I think is a hilarious way to respond back to people who have devoted their life to reading and studying the Scriptures, which is he says, "Have you read or studied the Scriptures?" He says, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and when he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or," he hits him again, "maybe you haven't read this part of the Scriptures, where in the law that the priests on the Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent. I tell you that something far greater than the temple is here." He's talking about himself. "If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would have not condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man," which is Jesus' phrase for himself, "the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath." So he goes on from that place. He went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand comes up. All right, so he's just gone through getting chastised for his disciples eating food, picking food and eating it. So they've got another trap that they're ready to spring on him. They say, they bring up this man who's got a shriveled hand to Jesus, and they say to him, they're looking for reasons to bring charges against him. They say, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "If any of you had a sheep and it falls into the pit on the Sabbath, would you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and a miracle happened. It was completely restored, just like the other. Luke, you talked about last week where it was like, okay, and then they were like, "We get it." "Oh, you just did a miracle in front of us." No, they plotted for how they might kill Jesus. That was their response. So, Jesus responds to an argument that clarifies the true definition of Sabbath, asserting his role as the promised Messiah and pointing out his divinity. Jesus understood the heart of the Sabbath, right? This gift from God, this rest. What God's original command was pointing to, right? When I might say the wisdom beneath it. To understand Jesus' point, let's look right above where we did in Matthew 12. Okay, this is a common tactic that the gospel author Matthew does, where he takes a teaching of Jesus, he makes it in plain English, and then he shows how Jesus might have practiced, how he did that in the world. So let's read that. This is Matthew 11, 28, 29. This is a good one. Get ready. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." I've been, as I've been preparing for this, just listening to the ways that people talk especially in our church. When we ask each other how we are, what their life feels like, I mean, you guys know this. The answer is, I'm tired. I got a lot going on. I've got too much going on. Yes, we are weary. We are burdened. That is not the life that God has for us. He has something way, way better. He has a garden life for us. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Are you tired? Are you worn out? Can you identify with this? Do you need rest? Yes, you do. Jesus wants to clarify the meaning of Sabbath for them, to stop the hard work to Shabbat and to be present with God, Nuach. And Jesus is here to actually usher in the full promise of seventh-day rest into the world. He is God's rest. And the people can come to him and find that true seventh-day rest that God intended. And he points to the original intention of Sabbath, right? A lot was built on it. The scaffolding, all the customs and everything. He points to the original intention, unity with God, unity with creation and with each other. Jesus teaches that Sabbath points to him, the one that all of Israel's prophets promised would come to mercifully restore the rhythm of creation. So, do you really need to practice this? Maybe you're starting to think of all the exceptions why you might not be in this group of people who should practice this. Let me say this. This is for you. It is for you and you and you. It is not for some people, but not the really busy ones, the high efficiency ones. It is for you. It is a gift for you. It is a command because we have such a hard time remembering it. But it is a gift. So, what are your exceptions that you have in your head? This sounds great, but I can't do this. I have kids. This sounds great, but I have a job and another job, and maybe if you're here, I work all week. I'm helping at church on Sunday. I got a lot of stuff going on Saturdays, maybe the only day that I have for me. I know these things. I identify with these things. But we need to make space for God to move in our life. Right? God says, draw near to me, your action, and he will draw near to you, his action. We need a reminder. That's the word in the start of the commandment. Remember the Sabbath. Yes, remember that you are a soul and not a machine. I feel like a machine sometimes. Yes, we need a habit. We need to be able to practice this. We need to return to it every week to open up a space for God to rest in us. It's easy for me to work into rest rather than out from rest. I'm often motivated by demands, stress, accomplishment, impressing others. Those are some of my big ones. What would life look like if the energy that you put out came from somewhere that it was poured into you? Yes, working from rest rather than for rest. We talked about in first service how often our bodies tell us that we need rest. If you know a teacher, you might know that at the end of a semester, almost inevitably they get sick. right? They finally get to the end, and their body is just done. It just gets sick, and it's forcing you to rest. I think that physical reality mirrors the spiritual reality, that we need a rhythm in which we rest. Otherwise, we are machines, right? We're not souls. When followers of Jesus observe Sabbath, we live on that day as if restoration has already taken place. We take a break from the broken rhythms and hustle and hardship. And then we set aside time to honor Jesus, to honor his rule, to enjoy his presence, and to extend rest to the rest of the world. When we trust God's invitation to come to him and truly rest, we become places, we become temples where his presence can dwell, like it dwelled in Jesus. This is a great line from Dallas Willard, who's one of my favorites. He's going to talk here about a little riddle that Jesus says that I want you to take with you and think about. Okay? Jesus says the Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. It's an interesting riddle. Sabbath was made for man, not man made for Sabbath. Willard says, that is, the Sabbath serves human life in some essential way. Without it, life cannot be what it should be. If you are always going. That is why it was given to us in the Ten Commandments, at the heart of the moral law. It is not something that we have to do because God arbitrarily required it of us. It's not some pointless hoop that we would have to jump through. It is a gift to us. At the same time, it makes clear that our life and our ministry is also his gift to us. When we enter into that rest and we feel that our life is a gift to us, all of these other things which feel like burdens, right? Our work, our life, our family, things that we work towards. It's like the scales are removed from our eyes and we can see them as the gifts that they are. Sabbath is a way of life. It sets us free from the bondage of our own efforts. Only in this way can we come to the power and joy of radiant life and a blessing to all we touch. And yet Sabbath is almost totally absent from existence in contemporary Christians and their ministers. So, can you see the gift hidden here in this practice? I really think the better question of not should I do this is how can I get this gift? How can I receive this rest that Jesus is talking about when he says, "Come to me, all you who are tired and burnt out and exhausted, and at the end of your rope and burning the candle from both ends." We have 1,000 metaphors for this very common thing. Come to me. That's not the life that I have for you. I have felt before trapped in that. This is the life that God has for me, this life of struggle, this life of nonstop work. That's how I have received my blessings in the past. Parents, have you ever come home at the end of the long day and looked at your kids like you couldn't imagine anything that would be more challenging than you right now, like to experience, like when they're bothering you, when they need so many things? This is the result of a worn-out life. We don't get to see the blessings that we have in front of us for the blessings that they are. That's a broken life. But there is an answer. Rest. Trusting the Lord. An analogy that I think could help in terms of understanding if we should practice this or not. Jesus practiced the Sabbath. He did it every week. He went through the day of preparation. He practiced Sabbath. Not exactly in the way that the religious leaders of the time would have liked him to. But he practiced the Sabbath each week. Did he need to? I asked that question earnestly, like, Jesus dwelled with God all the time. He didn't need a special day where he pushed everything else aside and did it, but he did it, right? I think it's similar to baptism, right? Did Jesus need to get baptized? He says he does it to fulfill all righteousness, right? But he's doing it as a model for us, how we should live our lives, what we should do. I think Sabbath is like that. So, that's what Sabbath is. Shabbat, Nuach. That's why I think you should practice it. Let's talk about the details. I'm going to share my experience with Sabbath. My experience is not the only experience, and I am not an expert. But I am a practitioner. My family and I practice this. We come back to it week after week. We do not get it right every time, or any time, maybe. That's a better way to say that. But this practice has formed me, Matthew. This practice has shaped me into the person that I am right now. It's formed me into a person who wants to spend time with God. Genuinely. It's formed me into a person who can experience restfulness in all the other 6 days. And it's a journey. And if you listened last week to Luke, if we place seventh day rest as our aim, if we place perfect indwelling of God in our life as the goal, and we only focus on the gap between my busy and burdened life and that, it's going to be too much. So I'm going to encourage you to give it a try, to trust in the Lord, take little steps towards this. Trust the Lord with your time. Trust Him that He will meet your restlessness with rest. Try it in community. You've got a room full of people who would love to do it with you. There are many people in this congregation that have a regular Sabbath rhythm, who can share that with you. And I'm going to share mine. We've got a roadmap here, 4 movements of Sabbath. We talked about Isaiah's vision of what it looks like. You remember the word delight in there, and joy and celebration. These, I think, are the 4 things that you do in Sabbath. Okay? Stop. But let me see. I'm going to work this out. I'm going to share what I do, what it looks like in my life. I'm going to share what it feels like to me. Because each of these things this is an emotional process. I want to tell you. It's kind of like fasting, where you enter into fasting and you're like, oh man, I'm going to be hungry. And then you're like, all of a sudden you're like, who am I? You're like other things come up. So I'm going to share what I do, how it affects me. And then I'm also going to share how it affects Nora. Nora is my 4, almost 5-year-old. She turns 5 this month. And we practice it as a family. So we do these things together. And it draws our family together. So, stopping. I stop working. Not checking email. Not responding to text. I also stop thinking about work. Hard to do. I stop church responsibilities. I'm a deacon, and there are a lot of church responsibilities. But on this day, I don't do them. I don't mow. I don't do chores. I stop using my phone. I stop using social media. I refrain from buying things, making plans, or making lists. That's what it looks like for me. 24 hours. This immediately causes me to see where I put my identity in. Okay? Immediately. As I struggle to not think about work, to not check my email, to not go to my phone when I get bored, it becomes clear how impactful all of those things are in my life. And how, when they're removed, what it feels like to not have those things occupy me. But it redirects me towards the Lord. It redirects me towards who He says I am and my identity in Him as a child of God. For Nora, this means no TV. She's not a fan of that. But what she is a fan of as a first child and a rule follower is to call out mom and dad when she sees us on our phones. She loves to do that. The second movement is rest. Here's what I do. I take a nap. I unhurry myself. I don't make plans. I sleep in and I go to bed early. What does it do to me? It resets my nervous system. Seriously. It moves my body's motion from striving, accomplishment, worry, and into peace and abundance. That actually happens to me every Friday night when I practice this. Does that sound incredible? Yes. Nora doesn't love naps. But her favorite thing about the Sabbath is that she tells us, she says, no one can tell me to hurry up. Yes, that's what she needs rest from. Her parents telling her to hurry up. The third movement is delight. We have a meal together. Lindsay and I practice from Friday night, at dinner, sundown time, until Saturday night, around that same time. We have a meal, we open a bottle of wine, we eat dessert. On Saturday, we play outside with friends, we go on long walks, we read books. On Friday night, we do a family movie night. All of these things reorient me from walking through the world in survival mode into enjoyment. Like actually getting to enjoy this life that God has blessed me with. Conversations with friends linger. Playtime feels more free. And every little thing that I get on that day is a gift. Nora really loves that I don't rush out of playtime. That I'm not telling her I got to go take care of something, or that I need a break because I just got back home from work, or that I need to leave to go to work. It impacts her. And she loves that we all watch a movie together after eating dinner on Friday night. We're not distracted or doing something else. We're all together. It's good. And then the fourth movement of Sabbath is worship. Worship, by definition, is when we give back to God what is His. So what is His in your life? Well, all the good things. Everything. Yes. Our time, our family, our life. On Sabbath, I let this truth permeate my whole being. That everything that I have is a gift. It is a transforming truth. I give God my time and my thoughts, and I surrender them to Him instead of them being my own. I give them up. We worship through thanksgiving and prayer and singing songs. If you know Nora, you know she loves to sing songs. So this is a great part of Sabbath for her. But it's also an act of worship. She has to surrender the things that she wants to do sometimes in this space. So each week looks different for our family. Many weeks we just miss the mark. Sometimes that comes from just not practicing. And sometimes it comes from being too focused on the practice and not embracing the gift. Both of those are possible. And sometimes progress, like Luke talked about last week, doesn't look like taking a step forward, but it looks like sitting down. Staying in one place, resting. Saying no. It's a big element of Sabbath. Are there any 24-hour periods in your life where nobody's asking anything from you? Not me. Resting. We establish that we're tired, we're worn out. Constantly. Sabbath rest is an invitation to practice for eternity in God's presence. That's what this gift is. It is an act of regular and intentional trust of God's rule on earth. We Shabbat in order to nuach. We stop working so we can truly rest in God's presence. When we practice this purposeful pause, we make room for God to take up residence in our individual lives and in our community's lives. And when we do this, we take part in new creation, setting the stage for God to make his dwelling place once again on earth. It's cosmic. It's more than just a day of not working. It's a gift, and it is so good. So, this message is high challenge, high invitation, okay? I'm asking you to surrender 24 hours of your week, each week, to the Lord. That's high challenge. But it is also high invitation. I am telling you that when you do that, God will meet you there and taste heaven with him. In your life, your day-to-day life, in your home. High challenge, high invitation. I had a pastor a long time tell me that combo is discipleship. High challenge, high invitation. If we only have challenge, it's only stop working because it's arbitrary. That's nothing. That's authoritarianism. It's, And if we only have invitation, just experience, just enjoy. Boom. Top right quadrant, discipleship. That's what we're going for. And I encourage you to do it in community. Really, you might walk away from this and be like, that's just not for me. I can't make space for it in my life. It is for you, and you can. I promise that God will meet you there. He will. So, I got some other resources. If you pull this up, this is your homework. No. There are two other sections in the Bible that I think are really excellent that I didn't have time today to talk about in terms of Sabbath. The first one is Hebrews 4. This is like a sermon on Sabbath, okay, from the author of Hebrews. It's awesome. You should go and read that, okay? That's your homework. Go read Hebrews 4. Whole thing. Another thing, the Ten Commandments appear twice in the Old Testament. I don't know if you know that. It occurs in Exodus and then occurs again in Deuteronomy. And it's the same except for the commandment about Sabbath. The one about Sabbath has changed. The first one says to remember the Sabbath, and it uses the creation story as the reason why. The one in Deuteronomy is all about liberation. Okay? It says to honor the Sabbath by keeping it holy. And then it says why? He doesn't use the creation narrative. He says, because you were slaves. You know what it's like to work 7 days a week. And you know what it's like to find my rest. That's why you should do it. So, go read those two sections. But then, it might feel like you're in a ship in the middle of the ocean. You're like, how do I do this? What does it look like? These are some great resources to step into. Practicing the Way has an awesome practice about the Sabbath. We did it together as Postmates, our small group, and it was awesome. And it helps a lot to be able to form these ideas into your actual person and to habituate them and make them part of your life. This is a book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. That is another required reading for this type of thing. Pastor Rob is reading this book right now while he's on Sabbath, trying to learn how to do these things. And then finally, the Bible Project has a great series called Seventh Day Rest, which you should check out. So, we'll leave those up there if you want to write those down or take a picture. I highly encourage you to step into those things, and I highly encourage you to stop, rest, delight, and worship every week with the Lord. All right, if you'll stand up, I'm going to pray a benediction over you. Thank you guys for listening. I love you all.